in Malaysia. Yeah. Jonathan, have you got a chance to visit Malaysia?
Yeah, at some point. So I also went to Malaysia just for vacation. Yeah, it's a beautiful place.
Not for conferences. Not for conferences. Not for conferences. No.
Not for conferences. It's far more beautiful if it's not for conferences. It's vacation.
More relaxed. No, more relaxed. They want to let the work spoil your holiday. It's true. Yeah. How about yourself, Mussolini? Have you had a chance to go over to? I'm sure you've been to Sabah, right, Mussolini?
Sabah, no, but I've been to KL. I've been to Penang, and then Johor Bahru because it's near Singapore.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, good to know.
Mostly for seminars. Yeah.
Mostly for pleasure.
No, so for seminars. I was there
for
actually.
Seminar. For what?
I was there first quarter last March.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. We had a very strong representation at the Beijing Forum from the developing world. A very strong presence from representation from Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, not as many, I think. We got Malaysian representation, Laos, Cambodia. Yeah. Other than that, it's not. I think the focus this time is on Africa and Latin America. So the next 10 years. Yeah.
But a few weeks ago, I was in Xinjiang a few weeks ago. I visited Rongxi, Kasi, and Hilin for the BRI. I was there for 10 days with some international media.
Okay. And what was your impression? How do you feel about the trip?
Oh, it's a wonderful trip. I learned a lot of the Muslims in China, the Uyghurs, the Kazakhs, and I also found out all the cognitive warfare applied by the West, but especially by the US, giving false information about the real conditions of the Muslims in China. So it was an awakening for us. There were delegates from Saudi Arabia, from different countries, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, from Indonesia, and also India, Pakistan. So it was a good opportunity for us to learn and to engage people there.
I'm glad that you gone there, Mussolini, because my Institute of China Studies, my director Neo Chaoping himself also been to Xinjiang about 3 years ago. He had a similar experience. He felt that you need to be on the ground to really have an understanding of how the situation is. Basing on the media report itself doesn't give the full picture. And being able to be there to have a look at there's no question that what we able to see is only part of it, but still it's better than not being able to be there at all. So he came out from it, and most of it he did not go alone. He go with the delegations as well. So the takeaway from that trip is that we told our Chinese friends that you should encourage more of this.
Yes.
You should welcome more of us.
Yes.
Open your doors bigger so that more of us can go and have a look ourselves. Yes. And the more interactions we have, the better it will be. Then the narrative will be more accurate. And I think they took our advice, and I heard that there are more and more Malaysian delegations being organized or encouraged to go to Xinjiang to have a look at the situation itself. Yeah. So I'm glad you have a chance. Andy agrees.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Can I have a quick sort of snapshot? Mussolini and Musa and Jonathan, are you guys Muslim Filipinos? No.
Only
Good evening.
Musa is.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I am a Filipino Muslim living in the south of the Philippines, in Cotabato City.
Okay. So you do have a different sort of perspective to the situations in, for example, in Xinjiang and that kind of thing. At one level, it's not just academic; it's also personal in some ways, right?
Yeah.
I hope you have a chance to visit Xinjiang at some point.
Soon. If there's a chance, then it's good to know that.
Yeah, we got to let the embassy in Philippines, Manila, know that they should get people like you to visit Xinjiang as well. Yeah. Okay, while waiting for the last speaker, Professor Daifan, I just want to put some context to today's conversation. You know, Andy, GGI has been organizing a series of this webinar on China, Philippines interactions, you know, in the context of the recent development in the South China Sea. The first webinar we had about, I think, 2 weeks ago or 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was basically on crisis management and confidence building. How should the leaders on both sides be able to, in this moment of sort of increasing tension, try to mitigate the tension, try to manage the crisis, and in what ways we can continue to build confidence in each other. And the discussion that we had, obviously, we don't have the solution doesn't come overnight. It has to be long-standing. But one thing that we realize is that there is no better way to build confidence and manage crises than to have conversation. We felt that in times like this, we need to have more conversations, more dialogue, you know, listen out to one another and that sort of thing. So that was the first webinar I hosted on this Philippines and China conversation. And the second webinar that we had about a week ago was on the enhanced defense cooperation agreement that US and the Philippines had, and what is the implication of the EDCA with regard to the South China Sea disputes and its relations to China, and also the possibility in the event that there's a conflict across the Taiwan Straits, what are the implications of the EDCA as well? So those were the questions that were raised. We don't have all the answers, but it's important to raise those questions and continue to explore those questions and continue to ask those questions. And that's the purpose of the series of webinars we have right now, to continue to engage in those difficult questions as part of the crisis management and confidence building exercises that we have at the what we call it a tier 2 level among scholars. I think we feel that it's important to have conversations at all levels. Obviously, what ultimately matters is between the leaders themselves, that they have to at the ministerial level. But certainly at the tier 2 level, we as academians, we have a role to play as well, because our opinions just get filtered out in one way or the other, right? So I hope that's how it is. So that is the context of today's conversation. So we are building on previous conversations that we already had. So I hope you can have a sort of a better feel of that. This is not happening in isolation. This tonight's conversation is happening in the broader context of effort to build confidence, to build trust, to address some of the deficiencies that we have. We feel that is lacking, some of the sort of trust that we felt is lacking in the current situation, and we try to address that. So the hour has come. It's 8 o'clock. I think because we only have an hour and a half, and we have got 6 speakers, and the purpose of this conversation really is for you all to have a conversation for one another, especially for our Filipinos friends. If you have questions or concerns, and I really encourage you to post it to your Chinese counterparts. You know, ask them to say, can you explain to me why is this happening? How can this be mitigated? What else? And maybe also provide some suggestions to our Chinese counterparts, what they could do or not do in helping to, from your perspective, mitigate or alleviate some of the tensions that is happening in the South China Sea and in the broader region. Okay, so that is the purpose. So the title of today's conversation is on economic development, trying to balance the tension for the need for economic development and also national security concerns. How can we make sure that, you know, right now there's this need to see, for us in Southeast Asia, we always see America as critical for our national security. We always thought that America is needed in Southeast Asia and ASEAN to provide the security that we need as a counterbalance towards any other unforeseen forces that may undermine our national security. So it has always traditionally been that way. Then the rise of China has raised this economic dimension. We just felt that China is so critical, a part of our economic viability. In an ideal world, it will work well. You know, both China and the US we will be able to engage China economically, and then rely on in US for our security. But in the real world, it doesn't. The two superpowers has got into conflict. How do we balance that economic needs and also national security needs? So that is the general sort of framework we want to address. That have we gone too far to the security, national security side at the expense of our economic well-being, or have we become too dependent on China for our economic well-being that we are sacrificing our territorial integrity, our national security? Where is that balance? If there is any balance, how should it be achieved? Okay, so those are the broad outlines. So we have got 6 speakers. So I'm going to sort of suggest that each speakers will have opening remarks for maybe your prepared remarks that you have already made for 8 minutes, 5 to 8 minutes. If if you have a shorter remarks, then we have got more time for Q&A for you guys to engage one another. Okay, so but about 8 minutes opening remarks, and then after that we have Q&A and discussion between the 6 scholars. Okay, right, so let's start with today. I go by the lineup, but I think Dr. Fan is not with us right now, so why don't I start with let me see. Should I start? Dr. Zhou Mi, are you okay? Would you like to get the conversation going and give your take and your opening remarks on the subject matter? And then we have Filipino scholars to come after you. Okay?
Okay.
Dr. Zhou Mi, the virtual space is yours.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Please, can the host give me the right to share my screen, and I can do it to share some of my findings. I think it will be easier for you to look at some of the data or, you know, some of the facts, and I still not get the right. Actually, I just returned from the United States this morning at 4 a.m. So it's a very long journey back in from this country, and we had a lot of discussions about not only the bilateral relations, but also some other issues to do with different issues. So I cannot still share the screen. Is that possible for me to share my screen with you? And
Okay, let me just check with the support staff.
host.
Support staff, can you let Dr. Chao Mi to share screen, please?
Okay, I have.
Yeah, sure.
for the
One
right.
sec.
Yes. So I would like to share some of my findings to do with yeah, I think it's fine. I can do it now. Okay. Yeah, sure. So I will like to share some of my findings about the bilateral economic cooperation between China and the Philippines. I think it's a very interesting patterns that we can find between our two countries. Maybe a lot of us have observed the change of the bilateral trade between China and the Philippines, especially after the beginning of last year when the RCEP came into force. There are a lot of improvement. Well, the Philippines is a little bit latecomer to the agreement, but actually we are still have formed the family of providing better room for the economic cooperation among the 15 members. So I have noticed that if we are trying to look at some of the data, I will not only trying to look at the data as a global trend. Well, as for the trade between China and the Philippines, it is increasing definitely in the past few months. And if we are trying to look at the structure of the past, I mean, the 10 years between 2013 to 2022, I have used this graph to show some of the correlations between the Philippines export to China. So you may find in this graph there are two lines. The blue lines are the slope of the export to China, which is a kind of trend represent what has formed in the past 10 years. If it is above the zero, it is more increased in the past period. Well, if it's negative, it means it's decreased. So for this graph, we notice that there are several pikes. The pikes represent different categories. If we're looking at access code of the goods, you may find the number 14 as a vegetable planting materials, and the 24 the tobaccos and manufacturing tobaccos substitutes, and 54 as the man-made filaments, and 72 the iron and steel, and also 83 the metals. So for all these four or five categories, they are especially extremely in the export to China. It shows that when we're looking at the trend of the Philippines, it depends a lot on the demand of China, not only from the consumers, but also for many factories. So that is very obvious. So if you are looking at those categories with the negative data, like the 27 of the mineral fuels, the 59 of the textile fabric, and 82 with the tools, implements, and spoons or forks, something to use in the dining table, they are a little bit drop. So if you compare with this graph, you may find that most of the categories, the products that the Philippines export to China are in the increasing trend. It means that the Philippines are really get good at making the use of a Chinese market to increase its own benefit. Well, if we're looking with another thing about import, actually, we can find that in this regard, there are more spikes for the negative compared with positive. It means even when we are having better integrations between our two countries, the situation that a lot of farmers or ranchers of the Philippines, they worry about China's export will shock a lot about the Philippines market. It didn't happen. So actually, even if there are several parts, like for the 53, the vegetable textile fibers, which is very important for the textiles and clothing makings, and 85 of the electrical machineries and equipment, they are increased about when the trade happened between our two countries. compared with that, we know that there are so many things that the Philippines are benefited by the integration or increase of the bilateral trade. So with these two graphs, it's very obvious that we may find most of the Philippines economies are benefited by the integration with China. It's not only because that the Philippine manufacturing can export a lot of more things to China, but also benefit by the integration with lower cost of the import from China, which is very important to strengthen the supply chains and enhance the abilities of the Philippines, the manufacturing on the global supply chain and industrial chain. So these are very general ideas about the bilateral trade. Well, beyond that, I think that in the recent year, we see some new trends, like for the e-commerce. E-commerce are playing a very good position in the recent years. When we are seeing that the comments has speed up the development of e-commerce in the Philippines with expectations of scale of digital economy reaching $25 billion in the year after the next, and $92 billion in the year 2030, which is approximately about 12% of the GDP then. So it means that when we are going to look at the expectation of the e-commerce in the Philippines, it's a very promising. So it's a very interesting, and I think that is also happening in China, that during the COVID time, the traditional retailers move their shops online. So this provides many better facilitations for the people who are going to consume. And even after the COVID, the habit has been formed. So it's providing a very important room for the e-commerce platforms, and these companies are really trying to improve their efficiency. Well, it is also true that in the Philippines, that infrastructure improves very quick with third IT providers participation. The cost has been dropping a lot, while more innovations are expected to meet the different demand of the market. So I believe that with the participation of this operator, the telecommunication operator, there will be much more space for the improvement of the cooperation with cooperation with Chinese counterparts. So as the time limit, I will just trying to finish my remarks for the last page. That is the risks of recovery of the Philippines. We can find that the Philippines, although is increasing very quickly with better integration in the regional supply chains with other Eastern Asian and Southeastern Asian countries, the infrastructure may be still not sustainable due to the change of the government's attitude to resources and organizing formats. We know that the new administration is trying to change the method of getting the money for support or finance those projects, which is changed from to get the government financial support to the private sectors. I admit that it is true. The private sectors can be more active and more free by the location of the things. But the fact is that in nowadays status, that we are still not reached that position, and very basic infrastructure are needed, and those projects are not so profitable. So even if you open your market to the private sectors, they may not be very interested in providing the money to them. So this is one of the risks that we have to face and trying to deal with. But the second is that the supply chain restructure needs more confidence and mutual trust to decide the ways and the intensities of cooperation. I know that China's companies are really good at producing some products with a much lower cost, and they are not only trying to do everything in China. So the cooperation with other countries is one of their willingness. But if they are not seeing a stable future, maybe they will shorten the decision making for the project return term, and that is very bad thing for improving the cost. But the third risk is that the remittance is a very important income for the Philippines. But the remittance can be fluctuated more with unstable exchange rate affected by a lot by the Fed of US-oriented policies. We now know that the policies of the Fed has affected a lot by the spillover to other countries, even they are having very heavy debt, but they will not take care of that. So if you are still to the currency, and it will have some harm for the federal for the reserves of this country. And the fourth one is the militarization will reduce the private sector's willingness and ability to choose place for the longer term cooperation. They may be afraid that their asset will be taken by the government or affected by some of the uncertainty. So they may choose some place much safer. And the last one is that innovation need more cooperative adjustments for the rules, including trade, investment, and intellectual property rights, etc. So the cooperation means that the government should make decisions by first, they need to trust each other. So I think that there are so many potential areas that both sides can work on to improve the welfare of the people. But if we are not trying to provide a transparent, foreseeable, and stable environment, a lot of things can be done, but in a much more expensive way. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you so much, Zhongwei. Thank you so much for, you have already prepared quite a lot, but you managed to present them in the 8 minutes that I suggested. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Zhongwei's main point is this. I'm going to have Dr. Mussolini to come next. But I just want to recap Zhongwei's main point. Zhongwei's main point is that Philippines and China trade relations Philippines has benefited in general. This is from Zhongwei's analysis. The trade between the two countries remains very critical. Philippines still is very much integrated into the China's economic sort of circuit, and there are apparent risks that is involved right now. Among the others is the militarization that could undermine confidence and others. So those are the general sort of outline that Zhongwei has presented. So Dr. Mussolini, you would want to take some a minute or two to respond to Zhongwei, or you may or may not want to, or you want to go straight into your prepared remarks, that's fine. But that's how, let's start again. I mean, if you want to respond to Zhongwei, that would be great. But if you want to go straight to your prepared remarks, that would be great as well. Okay, the floor is yours, Dr. Mussolini.
Okay, thank you, Peter. My short message for this webinar actually somehow supports some of the points that was raised earlier. But I think it would be better if I go straight to my discussions, as somehow it will reflect what I mean. So last May 2022, there was a change of administration. And we know that the new government, the new administration has a different foreign policy towards the US and towards China. And unfortunately, there are many so-called think tanks in the government, and the government officials from the security sector, from the Department of National Defense, even as low as the Coast Guard, Philippine Coast Guards, are mostly having this bias towards the situation of US and China. And because of that, we faced a lot of challenges on the ground. My university in Ateneo de Davao University started our engagement with the Chinese government, with the People's Republic of China just this year. And in the past 10 months, I visited China twice. I visited, I think, more than 10 cities already in China. And I've learned a lot in my visits, and in my development work for the last 20 years, more than 20 years, we've been working closely with US, with New Zealand, with Japan. And it was just recently where we have a concrete programs with the People's Republic of China. So former President Rodrigo Duterte's independent foreign policy of being friend, I quote, friend to all and enemy to none, unquote, still stands during his time. But unfortunately, we hope that it will stand even today in the President Bongbong Marcos administration. Last year, in his first State of the Nation, the State of the Nation address, President Bongbong Marcos said that the Philippines' foreign policy will keep the Philippines a friend to all and enemy to none. It is a policy he describes based on the pursuit of peace and promotion of our national interests. However, we've seen a different tune starting after President Bongbong Marcos' trip to the US. Although he went first in China, but there were a couple of foreign trade agreements that was supposed to be implemented, but I think there was some challenges along the way. With the Belt and Road Initiative, I do believe that the right way to move forward for the Philippines is to engage more China and for Filipinos to learn the truths, the facts of our history. China has become more focused on adding value and investing in research and development across various industries, including the food industry. And the Chinese government has also supported the opening up of the domestic market to international suppliers, allowing China to share its market and resources with the world. As a result, China has become an international platform where resources and information around the world converge. China's program, such as the Belt and Road Initiative, can be a good opportunity for our country. But unfortunately, most Filipinos are stuck in looking at the South China Sea, or what they call here as the West Philippine Sea. With Xi Jinping's assumed the position as General Secretary of the Communist Party in 2012 and has been the President of China since 2013, President Xi's leadership has prioritized economic reform and innovation, as well as the Belt and Road Initiative, which aims to strengthen connectivity and trade between China and countries around the world. President Xi Jinping also focused on addressing corruption and expanding China's global influence to various security sectors. And in fact, it was not only that. My personal experience in Xinjiang, I've learned how China was able to combat violent extremism or terrorism in the Central Asia, specifically in Urumqi, in Xinjiang province. The fast pacing of the BRI, this will lead to increased trade and investment flows in the region and around the world. Its technological advancement in areas such as telecommunications, AI, or artificial intelligence, and renewable energy will further shape the global economy and foster innovation. Thus, we ask ourselves, where do we position Philippines? How do we define our economic, social, and political interests with having these current events, current things with our neighbor in China? So our way of moving forward, I think, number one, we can take good advantage of the ongoing Bangsamoro peace process. As a former commissioner, the one that drafted, one of the ones who drafted the Bangsamoro Basic Law, which eventually became the Bangsamoro Organic Law, that created the Bangsamoro region, I do believe that this is a good time for not only for the People's Republic of China, but even for our network in Southeast Asia to focus and help us in building this region. Bangsamoro has been lagged behind for more than 5 decades in the whole country because of the right to self-determination, struggle of the Bangsamoro people. Second, we've worked with selected local government units. In fact, right now we have 5 Iranun. Iranun is a local ethnic group that also claims ownership of the South China Sea, because the Iranun people are one of the sea navigators in the ancient times. Also, highly developed local government units that they want to also engage and they want to maximize the available resources that they have, including mining, agriculture, and fisheries. And lastly, I do believe that with the advent of Facebook and all the Western social medias that limits our access to information, I do believe that local information technologies with their own inventions, with their own startup programs, maybe my friend Jonathan Traya could also expand. We need to have our own WeChat or our own TikTok or our own social media where we are no longer restricted by the Meta programs of Facebook and Instagram or even X. Because we know for a fact that with the recent Israel-Palestine, we've seen how the Western media controls the narrative and information. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you, Mussolini. I just need some clarification if you can help me with this. When you mentioned about Bangsamoro, Iranu people, and you're suggesting that these are the agreements that could set out a kind of a guideline or a guidepost towards resolving the South China Sea issue. I may have missed.
Yes. In a way, it could instead of focusing on the up north, Luzon and Visayas of the Philippines, Luzon and Visayas are highly colonized by the Spaniards and the Americans, and that's why they have unlikely support of China initiatives for this part of the world. However, in the Bangsamoro, the wounds of the past, especially of the Americans' dealings with our culture, with our people, is still very fresh. And I think engaging, like for example, in conducting more seminars, sending more scholars, sending more students to China to learn more and to adapt more new information technologies advancement can be a better alternative rather than focusing on an endless debate, because some of my friends based in Manila were also supporting to have a good foreign policy with China, are stuck in the debate where they've been bombarded by so many U.S. mentality Philippines.
Okay, this is certainly something new for myself, but I'm not too sure whether my Chinese counterparts are aware of it. But we will certainly want to engage that. Now, I'm not too sure whether I should have Dr. Dai Fan come next or Dr. Wang. And Dr. Dai Fan is just because according to the list, I should have you come in right next after Mussolini. But let me set some context, Dr. Dai Fan. Dr. Chowmi has started off the conversation. It basically says that the Philippines economic relations is integrated to China, and there's considerable risk to the Philippines' economic well-being with the increasing militarization of the crisis that we are facing right now. And then Mussolini just came on after Chowmi, and Mussolini had come up with this quite novel, from my perspective, idea of looking at the Bangsamoro and the Iranu people's sort of own struggle as a template, perhaps, or some model in which we could perhaps find some solution for the South China Sea issue. Anyway, the broader context of the discussion really is the tension between economic well-being and security needs. How is that impacting the Philippines situation right now with the US-China tension? So I will have Dr. Dai Fan go next, and then I will have Dr. Musa following Dr. Dai Fan. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Dai Fan. You have about 8 minutes.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well.
So I have 8 minutes, right? Hello?
Can you repeat it? I can hear you.
How I have 8 minutes, right?
Yes, you have 8 minutes. Yes.
Okay, so I'm sorry because now I'm using my smartphone, so because I cannot use my Zoom on my laptop, so now I have to speak via my smartphone. So my topic is about maritime disputes, big power, and China-Philippine relations. I have never seen China-Philippine relations as complicated as it is today. During my 10-year study of the Philippines, here I'd like to review the past China-Philippine relations over the past decades and explore some factors affecting China-Philippine relations, especially the impact of maritime dispute and big powers competition, for example, maybe American and China competition, how these factors influence Philippines foreign policy and China-Philippine relations. So, the first stage, China-Philippine relation during the Cold War times. We know, I mean, regarding the China-Philippine relations, we know both sides established diplomatic relations in 1975. In the following decades, the relation between China and the Philippines at a very low level, but stable. And during this period, scholars and politicians often mentioned the South China Sea disputes on its potential a potential impact on bilateral relations, but no real conflict took place over South China Sea. And we will know in 1970s and 1980s, China and the American also formed the de facto peace alliance. In the second stage, China-Philippine relation in the 1990s. Now in 1990s, I mean, in 1995 and 1997, two conflicts over mischief between China and the Philippines took place, which may worsen the insecurity of the Philippines because the Philippines was able to cope with China over South China Sea by its own strength. So it may contribute to the signing of Virginia Falls Agreement between the Philippines and the United States in 1998. So besides, I mean, regarding the China-American relations, in 1990s, not so many conflicts took place between China and the United States. Okay. In the third stage, China-Philippine relations in the first decade of the 21st century, China-Philippine relations developed very smoothly. Both sides regionally and properly handled South China Sea disputes in the bilateral relations, with the Latin maritime dispute affect the bilateral relations. And also, please notice, since 2001, counterterrorism has become the main strategic priority of the United States. And China also supported Americans' global counterterrorism policy. So the relationship between China and the American also stable. However, everything changed in the fourth stage since 2010. Because since 2009, Obama administration had launched the pivot to Asia-Pacific and Asia-Pacific strategic rebalancing, giving opportunity to attention to Asia-Pacific. So it means the era of strategic competition between China and the United States. So Americans' adjustment on Asia policy needed to some serious impact on the regional situation. In addition, so since President Aquino took power in 2010, China-Philippine relations have fallen to a low ebb. One of the reasons is also South China Sea dispute. So, however, during Duterte administration, the Philippines kept a certain distance from the United States and also chose to froze South China Sea dispute between China and the Philippines, which promoted the development of China-Philippine relations. However, when Bongbong Marcos took power last year, as we can see, the United States had launched an offensive against the Philippines and also tried to build closer military and security relation with the Philippines. Since this year, the Philippines has been more confident and also aggressive in the South China Sea. So it's real unprecedented, at least to me. So let me sum up, okay? The first, I mean, South China Sea dispute is indeed a major factor that affects China-Philippine relations, but it's not the only factor. Second, Americans' involvement in regional affairs and its policy to contain China has largely affected the Philippines' foreign policy and China-Philippine relations. In order to compete with China, America has intensified its efforts to win over its regional allies. As a long-term ally of the United States, it's difficult for the Philippines to get rid of the influence of the United States. We know in South China Sea, the Philippines is a very unique country. And the biggest uniqueness to the African country in Southeast Asia. So it means that, Philippines so even though South China Sea is very important, Philippines relation with American and especially its pro-American policy. So it means that Philippines foreign policy might be easily influenced by American and outside factors. Okay, yeah, that's my opinion. Thank you. Hello.
Yeah, thank you, Taifan. Thank you. For most of the 8 minutes, we hear you very well, except for the last minute is staggered a little bit. But we still got your main message, Taifan. I'm not too sure whether Dr. Musa is online with us. Basically, Taifan is just make 2 key points that things begin to change with Obama pivot to Asia. And there's no question that the South China Sea disputes is pre-existed, it's always there, but no, then the pivot to Asia thing, US containment strategy really complicates the South China Sea disputes. But before I pass the floor to Musa, I just want to allow Andy to respond a little bit to Mussolini's suggestion about the Bangsa Moros and Iranus people sort of suggestion. Andy, you want to have a couple of points to make about that?
Yes, thank you for giving the floor. I think that either with the BR initiative or without BR initiative, I think for places like Bangsamoro in Philippines and also some regions in other cities, in other countries, I think that is the place where the investment from Chinese commercial side would look forward to put their money in. So I think, given the status of the Celebes Sea, it has several neighbors. It had Malaysia maritime neighbor, Philippine maritime neighbor, and also even for the Indonesia, because Indonesia and Malaysia share a land border on that island. And also in case of the Bangsamoro has lots of resources which could be developed. I think for the peace of the whole region, I think the think tanks in this region could put forward a kind of the declaration of peaceful development of Celebes Sea, so that we would call on the international investment to put their money in this area of the seas, not only Bangsamoro, but also, of course, including Bangsamoro, but also maybe, as Indonesia, they are going to move the new capital to one city along this sea, and also for the Basa area of Malaysia. I think we could, at the same time, we could do that, and also I'd like to put a little bit context of this dialogue. This is a serious dialogue. So I want to acknowledge my thanks to Ko King Kee, the president of the East-West Bridge. When we discussed, we came up with the idea. We talked a lot about the regional agenda setting. We think that too much resources are put on the security set, and those resources could or should have been devoted into the development area. And the key thing that also giving Malaysia a kind of a neutral status, the East-West Bridge could hold a series of dialogues, and we could be a co-organizer to call on experts from both Philippines and China to discuss those emerging issues. Finally, I think, again, I think, as I always said in all the meetings for this country in this region, how to make a balance between security and development, to give more priority to development in bilateral or regional agenda setting. This is an issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you. Let me just now give the floor to Dr. Musa. Musa, you could respond either to Andy's comments, if you have any comments about Andy's suggestion of development around those regions, the southern Philippines, Sabah, and the new capital Nusantara, Kalimantan, that Indonesia is going to have potential area of growth. And also you could respond also to Professor Taifan's general remarks about pivot to Asia and the South China Sea conflict. And feel free, you can go straight to your prepared remarks. Musa, the virtual floor is yours. 8 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much. I will be presenting to you a little paper on the. Actually, I prepared a presentation. The title is Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, and the Bangsamoro region, because I know that China is, the Bangsamoro needs the like of China in the development of the Bangsamoro. But let me
Do you want to
start.
share screen? Do you need to share screen? You don't have to share screen.
No. I think there is no need to share on the screen.
Okay.
I would just like to present or to give you a very short overview of my paper. And let me start on the idea that we are now living in the post-American world, and this post-American world is characterized by the rise of multipolar world order, in which the global system is no longer centered in Washington, but in other countries. As we see the rise of countries, major countries, for example, Russia, we have China, we have Iran, and we have Saudi Arabia. And this is a very important indication of the shifting international system that we have today. And of course, the rise of China is paving the way of the emerging international order. And because of this, the evolution of a new world order, a fully multipolar world composed of many large regions that are distinct in the workings of their economies, laws, cultures, and security networks, and that is manifestly underway. What is this? What do I mean by multipolarity? Multipolarity is gaining traction and will have two broad axes. The first is that the poles in the multipolar world have to be large in terms of economic, financial, and geopolitical power. The second is the essence of multipolarity is not simply that the poles are large and powerful, but also that they develop distinct and consistent ways of doing things. So given that this is an emerging situation, what is the response of US in Asia? Of course, the main response is that the United States has been establishing alliances with different countries. And we can see that there are a lot of military bases in Asia, including the Philippines. And that's why we experience here in the Philippines, and we saw the US-Philippine military exercises in the Philippines. So what's the possible scenario, which is very challenging? The possible scenario is that the alliance is critical in Philippine side as at its location is strategic and thus posing a great threat in securing the areas of the South China Sea. And another possibility is clearly stated by experts that the Philippines being an important asset of the United States when should there be a Sino-Taiwanese clash in the future. So that's a very challenging situation. But given all of this, as I said before my opening remarks, is that there is a need of, as I said, the Bangsamoro needs China, given all of this kind of scenario in the Philippines. So what is this? What is my proposal when it comes to BRI and the Bangsamoro? You know, as you may know, the BRI was founded on the principles of extensive consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits. And it advocates win-win cooperation in pursuit of shared interest and the greater good. And that the BRI is committed to the concept of open, green, and clean cooperation on exclusive and sustainable development. So the vision is that the BRI envisions a path to global well-being. So that's why, as I said, the Bangsamoro needs this kind of development. Given that the Bangsamoro is just on its transition, as Sir Mussolini had said a while ago, you know, the Bangsamoro region is an infant region in this part of the world that it needs development. And what I see is that China, the role of China in the development of this region is so crucial, so important. The potential cooperation, for example, of China and Bangsamoro is that the bilateral cooperation between China and Bangsamoro produces important development and regional economic growth, and that the BRI project will be of great help for the Philippines and particularly on the Bangsamoro, because as emerging region of the Philippines, BARM or the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao needs, China for its infrastructure and socio-economic development. And finally, the question is how China's BRI look like, for example, in the region of the Bangsamoro. The first one is that China can give to the Bangsamoro this kind of project on infrastructure connectivity. For example, the substantial progress should be made in the constructions of roads, bridges, or transport systems, especially in remote communities, because the Bangsamoro region is not that developed compared to other provinces and compared to other regions in the Philippines. And of course, there is also a need of this kind of maritime connectivity. That means a network of ports connecting the mainland Mindanao and the island provinces of the BARM. As if you see in the map, there are island provinces of the BARM, of the Bangsamoro region. And of course, air connectivity. It can facilitate cross-border transport from mainland to the island provinces. So that's how China can help the Bangsamoro, the emerging region in this south of the Philippines. So I think the Chinese government should consider all of this kind of assistance and development that they may offer in the Bangsamoro region. So thank you so much, and good evening.
Thank you, Musa. I think we are losing Peter. I'm going to provide moderation for the sake of the conference. I think before we go to the next speaker, I think have a question regarding Musa's proposal about how to link the development of a Bangsamoro area with the BRI project. I think for the investors of China, one of their concerns will be, for all the investors, if they want to invest money in one area, they need a kind of a stable political environment so that the project will not be affected by the change of the regimes. So I think that is one of concerns, from the Chinese investors. It is not only related to Philippines, but also in other areas, like in Sri Lanka. So for the previous government, we signed the contract, we poured into a huge portion of money, but after the new regime came up, then it just stopped. So it will be huge losses for those investors. So I think for that concern, I think for the Chinese investors, they will have this kind of concern. And also, you invite me to think of one of the points mentioned by Peter in the previous conversation. He raised a very interesting point. His main point is that although the Malaysian government changed in a very frequent approach in recent years, but their foreign policy has been staying quite stable. So it's a very interesting point. So that's my initial response to your remarks. And also, I think I agree with you that we need to push all those regional countries to have development as the priority of agenda setting. Not only the development of the Bangsamoro area, but also the whole area of this Sea of Celebes Sea. So that's my initial response. I think for next speaker, I would like to invite Mr. Wang Xianyun to give your remarks, either your prepared presentation or you would like to respond to the previous speakers. And also, please pay attention to the timelines. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you,
Unmute
Mr.
yourself
Tian,
first.
for inviting me. Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So
Yes.
can I start, right?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So today's remark, I would like to talk about how to balance the security demand with the development. As we know, a country's overall strategy usually includes two basic aspects, namely security and development, which need to be considered in an integrated way. Security is a prerequisite for development and provides a peaceful and stable environment necessary for development. Development, on the other hand, is the foundation of security, which can be better promoted by development. The two need to be considered as a whole and mutually coordinated. If the excessive emphasis on security demand is not coordinated with the national economic development, it can be believed that such security demands are beyond a reasonable degree and may bring deviation to the overall strategy of the country. In my opinion, the current Philippine government has overemphasized security demands to a certain extent, at least in the following three aspects. Number one is to play up and exaggerate the security threat of China, while continuing to highlight the primary security challenge in the South China Sea maritime dispute. The Philippine National Security Policy Report 2023 to 2028, issued by the Marcos Jr. administration after it took office, has played up impact of a possible conflict in Taiwan Strait on the Philippines as never before. The second is to further bind itself to the US security strategy. The Philippine government has agreed to provide the United States with new military bases. According to some media, two of these new bases are located on the northern island of Luzon, which would give US forces a strategic position from which to mount operations in the event of a conflict over Taiwan or the South China Sea. The third is to abandon the prudent and the diplomatic approach followed by the previous administration in dealing with maritime dispute in favor of an increasingly confrontational approach, therefore resulting in rising maritime incidents between the Philippines and China in the past several months. Since the beginning of this year, the Philippines has carried out a series of tough actions in the South China Sea, which is reflected in an obvious increase in the frequency of forced incursions on the Renai Reef and the expansion of friction to the Huangyang Island. In my opinion, the development of the current situation is basically consistent with my previous judgment. That is, after the new Philippine government came to power, the frequent high-level interaction between the Philippine and the US government have enabled the two sides to reach some kind of strategic understanding or deal. That is, the Philippines agrees to provide the United States with new military bases, especially those located in the northern part of the Philippines near the Taiwan Strait, and in return, the United States would more strongly support the Philippines' claims and relevant actions in the South China Sea. The Philippines has highlighted its security concern on the Taiwan Strait issue, just in order to find reasons and excuses for providing military bases to the United States in the northern Philippines. The Biden administration further clarified the scope of applications of the Mutual Defense Treaty between the two countries, saying that it will provide military protection to the Philippines in the South China Sea. Military cooperations between the United States and the Philippines has been strengthened, and the scale of joint military exercises has been further expanded. Since the beginning of this year, the Philippines has carried out a series of tough actions in the South China Sea, as I have just mentioned, which is reflected in the obvious increase in the frequency of forced incursions on the Renai Reef and the expansion of frictions to the Huangyang Island. Powers outside the region have also intensified their involvement, and the Philippines has become bolder in exerting pressure on China with the help of powers outside the region. The first joint Philippines and the US naval patrol in the South China Sea, a 7-nation joint military exercises was held in waters close to the disputed island. China has exercised utmost restraint while managing the Philippines' unreasonable maritime actions. However, China would never compromise on its core national interest and would be determined to safeguard it. Currently, the overall peace and stability of the South China Sea is facing a major impact, and China-Philippine relations has reached a new crossroads. At this important juncture, it is necessary to review the previous Philippine administration's approach to China's policy, so as to find some reference to help navigate through the difficulties. After taking office, President Duterte changed his predecessor's policy toward China, shifting from focusing on security to focusing on development, bringing about major changes in Philippine-China relations. The comprehensive development of bilateral cooperation in trade, investment, infrastructure construction, as well as cooperative exchanges between the armed forces and the Coast Guard, and the establishment of the bilateral consultation mechanism on the South China Sea, which has played a significant role to ensure there is no major issue threatening peace and security, have contributed to the regional stability and development, benefiting both countries and peoples. In this sense, President Duterte's balanced approach to security and development serves the fundamental interests of the Philippines. Under President Duterte's leadership, the Philippines economy has been blooming, employment has increased, and the domestic security environment has greatly improved. The Human Development Index, HDI, is an index used by the United Nations Development Program to measure the level of economic and social development of UN member states, many involving health, education, and per capita income. According to UNDP's annual Human Development Report, the Philippines HDI World Ranking has climbed to around 111th for 2 consecutive years, up from around 180th before 2016. HDI World Ranking has climbed to around 111th for 2 consecutive years, up from around 180th before 2016. That is a huge improvement. As we know, the Marcos Jr. government has rolled out a very ambitious agenda on domestic socio-economic development. Philippines Development Plan, PDP 2023 to 2028. This plan envisions a very vibrant, capable, and promising nation. To realize it, the Philippines will tackle the long-existing problems such as sustainable growth, infrastructure deficit, inclusive development benefiting all sectors of people. The task of domestic governance is very daunting and arduous, in my opinion. So in this regard, China can provide the necessary help. China has always cherished the friendly relations with the Philippines, which has formed since the ancient times under the hard-won good situation in bilateral relations. China also understands the traditional security ties that some Southeast Asian countries, including the Philippines, have with the United States, but does not want those ties to come at the expense of China's national interests. China does not want to see some countries proactively involved in great power conflicts for their own interests, despite the citing claims of national security. If that happens, it would not only be counterproductive for its security, but would also hurdle its development. That concludes my remark. Thanks.
Are you finished, Ms. Wang? We lost your hand. Okay, I think to summarize, I think Mr. Wang also raised some concerns shared by some Chinese scholars about how the U.S.-Philippine Defense Cooperation is impacting the bilateral relations between China and the Philippines. And now I'd like to give the virtual floor to Mr. Jonathan. Jonathan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, you may either respond to Mr. Wang's raised concerns, or you may just go to your prepared remarks, and then we came back to throw questions to each other between the two sets of the scholars. Thank you, please.
Okay, good evening, everyone. First, I would like to respond to Dr. Wang's observation. So about national security, it was a valid comment. No, the administration right now is leaning into the U.S. at some point as how the other or China perceives it. But on the Filipino side, especially in Luzon and Visayas, they have a different thinking. They have this colonial psyche of which they think that the Americans can help them or can make them feel secure. So it is a reality that we have like the dispute of the South China Sea. And it is a fact that brings this delicate condition that we have with China and the US, the two superpower rivalry. Because of that, I think that's the main reason why this webinar is being called upon to discuss on the role of this or of the role of our country, Philippines, with regards to the rivalry of China and the US in terms of economic power and maybe security power as well. So now I will proceed to my paper. So actually I prepared a paper for this. So this paper is leaning towards more on my discipline, which is on philosophy, on anthropology, history, and psychology. So the paper titles is entitled Bridges and Bonds, the Philippine Diplomatic Stance in Sino-US Competition. So what do I mean about bridges and bonds? So this is the main theme of the paper. So given that the situation of the Philippines is so critical, it's not the same with all other nations. Like, for example, nations like Finland can stand on neutrality. The Philippine situation is very nuanced, very peculiar, because we are an ally of the US. We are in economic bilateral relation with China, and we have a dispute on the South China Sea, which gives them more complication. And another one, there is a looming problem, let's say possible problem with Taiwan and China. So that's really a delicate situation. So this is really a special situation. So the problem is, what's the role of the Philippines and how to balance this between China and the US? Actually, that's the main concern. If we forward to more security concern, then maybe we will create like security issues, no? That would hamper our development. If we go towards more economic development, then we will have a problem about protecting our sovereignty. So these are the concerns that are at hand. And depending on where you sit, like us, the panelists, we are in Mindanao. Depending on where you sit in the country, because it's divided into actually main 3 islands. So in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. The Luzon and Visayas are the most colonial people because they are most conquered during the time of the colonial Americans, and also in Spain. But in Mindanao, we consider our place as unconquered because most of the colonials are just in the peripheries, except for the Americans, who have a historical situation with us in terms of like forcing their coloniality in our land, especially the atrocities that happened with our Moro brothers. So that's the situation. So meaning the Bridges and Bonds talks about historical relations and cultural connections. Maybe these two things could be a resolution for creating a kind of diplomacy to handle this balance. Because both China has historical and cultural connections with us. Historically, many Filipinos also celebrate Chinese New Year. We also understand Confucius. We also have we have Asian legacies. We communicate through Asian times using those Silk Road, on the sea. We do trading, even the coming of the Spaniards and the Americans. With historical relations, we have a concrete historical relations with Americans. They colonized us. So they stayed in here for 40 years. And another fact is they also educated us. That's why we know how to speak English. They changed our education system. We have our own frame of colonial mentality. We coming from the Spaniards. We know and we understand pop culture. So meaning the Philippines seated in between of those allies that we actually allies for the long years. We have historical relations, which is from US, and we have also cultural connections, which is from China. As we observed during the context of decolonization, people are trying to find the Eastern way of viewing the world. So we want to debunk the West. The West is also eating our thoughts here, especially our youngs. And the East, which is where all of us stands, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Asian countries, also China, we understand each other better compared to the Western thinking. Except otherwise that some of Filipinos are really into colonial mentality. So this is where the balance should be. The balance should be, as I propose in my paper, should be on the bridges and bonds, on the historical relations, and on the cultural connections that we have. Apart from that, we believe that these countries, like China, is built its greatness on the foundation of harmony and peace. And the Americans also built their powers as they rise in power in the foundation of democracy and freedom. And these values should be upheld during diplomacy. So in the bilateral talks, this could be discussed, the shared interest among nations. So we will not this is a kind of asset framing. We will not focus much on the depleting relationships like the insecurity because the forces are coming here, or the economic development that could be curtailed because of the problem of an imbalance. But rather, let's frame our assets to what we can do best in our shared interest, in our shared perspective, and which is, as I proposed, the historical connections and the cultural relationships that we have. So imagine a lever with a fulcrum. The Philippines is the fulcrum, and in the lever, the left arm and the right arm are the forces of the China and the US. To balance it, imagine this, to balance it, we need the historical relations and the cultural connections to guide us in balancing it. And guided with what? Guided with the shared ideas that these nations were built. So this is the content of my paper. Besides that, I also introduced another concept, which is to focus more on the present, not on the historical past or in the anticipation of the future. Because this would bring us into entanglement. By shifting our focus in the present, we will have a clear goal then. We have a clear goal into doing dialogues and diplomacy rather than resorting into like insecurities and leading into war and canceling out each other's peaceful harmony. So I think the resolution is for us to talk, and this is a good forum. And thank you for inviting us to be part of this.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think you raised a very interesting point, which is to put the elements of philosophy into the engagement of the diplomatic relations. That's a quite interesting point. And I think I'm very interested to carry out this conversation with you after the meeting, because your point echoes exactly with one initiative raised by GGI, my think tank. It's called Initiative on Inclusive Coexistence of Civilizations, which trying to develop to the exact opposite of the theory raised by Samuel Huntington, the clash of civilizations. So instead of a clash of civilizations, we think that the different civilizations could coexist. So that's the kind of a theory we're trying to develop. And at the same time, we're trying to find resources in each country, to find partners in each country to foster this idea at the bilateral level or even regional level, or how to build this theory of coexistence, inclusive coexistence of civilizations. I like your interest. I like your point quite very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I can share to you the paper I've written for this.
Thank you. I think with Jonathan's remark, we have finished the first round of this discussion. I think we still have 12 minutes. So what I'm going to do is that I will invite our Filipino friends to raise questions for their Chinese colleagues and vice versa. So for the final round, I would expect all the questions and answers to be short and direct and just cutting to the point. Thank you. For the first round, I will invite our Filipino friends to raise questions to our Chinese colleagues. So please, Masaluni, would you please kick off the questions?
Yeah, I think my curiosity right now is after this, how do we move forward? I believe this is a series of dialogue, conversations. So, what are your next plans next?
Thank you. So I will collect the question together, and for the question, I would like to deliver to Dr. Dai Fan, and other Chinese speakers could also add to his response. So the second question, Musa, would you please? Also, do you have questions to raise?
Yes. Actually, the continuation of my discussion a while ago, I would like to ask our Chinese friends on the matter of how, for example, how the Chinese government could extend development initiative in Mindanao, for example, given that there is a challenging situation between the Philippine government and the Chinese government. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to delegate this question, your question, to Dr. Zhou Mi. And also the final, I think, Jonathan, do you have questions?
I no, I have no questions yet.
Okay, then I will invite our Chinese colleagues to respond to those questions. So for Ms. Soloni's question on how can we move forward from the current situation? So please, Dr. Dai Fan, are you still there? Hello, Dr. Dai?
I'm not sure. I'm not.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, please go on, please.
I'm sorry. I just I didn't hear the question. I just came to my hotel now. So sorry. I didn't hear the question.
It's okay.
Hello.
I think this Soloni's question is how can we move on from the current situation, given the current situation very complicated? I mean, from where we are now, how can we move forward? I mean, you mean given the background of the Sino-China competition, the sovereignty issues in the South China Sea. So, given all those complicated issues, what's your suggestion on how can we move on?
Okay, so when we view the past decades of our past relations between the Philippines and China, so I mean, so it's better for us to, because I mean, Philippines is a developing countries, and so it also has plenty of people who are living under, hungry. So, I mean, the best and the priority of the Philippines should focus on development and to improve its people's living. So, the best way for us to phrase the present tension over South China Sea, and we need to have to wait years, and maybe in the future, if we have enough rich time and if we have enough opportunity, we may resolve our present dilemma. So now, I mean, so if we have some outside factors, maybe some big powers in too much involvement in Asia Pacific, so we may make the South China Sea situation more complicated, because I mean, for example, Americans try to use South China Sea disputes between China and the Philippines to end the relations between China and Southeast countries. However, the purpose of the American is to serve its national interest, not to serve the interest of the Philippines. So, I mean, the best way for us to focus on our common interest to develop our economy and afraid the present disputes over South China Sea, and also resist some big powers intention in this area.
Thank you, Dr. Dai. Mr. Wang, do you have something to add to the first question raised by Mussolini?
Yeah, I think the first that the government should just rethink what is the fundamental interest of the people, what are the people's needs, So in my opinion, the Philippines, just as Dr. Daifang has pointed out, that is an underdeveloped country, the Philippines, so urgently needs the development of its infrastructure to sustain the economic growth and to make the economic growth benefit all sectors of the ethnic group of people. So to have more focus on development, that will naturally shift its grievances, just as some leader pointed out on the South China Sea. If you just shift your attention, your focus from something that is not just a real problem away to the real concern, to the real demand of the people. So you will just, on the one hand, solve the problems of development, on the other hand, maintain the peace and the stability. Secondly, I think right now, the situation has just come to a new crossroads. If something happens, something will just, I mean, something happen will just escalate to the place that beyond control. That is very dangerous. That will harm and damage all what we have just gained in the past 6 years since the turnaround of the bilateral relations between China and the Philippines. So we should just resume the dialogue, resume the communications between the governments and each consultative mechanisms between the two sides. So to prevent the further escalating of the tension. That is something China would not like to see, but many might be liked by some outside players. That concludes my remark. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Wang. I think there is also a point of a window opportunity. If we put all the resources on the national security concerns, I think for any country, there is a potential danger of losing the window opportunity of strategic development. So the time is the time does not allow us to do the same thing at the same time. So let me give the floor to Dr. Zhou to respond to questions raised by Dr. Musa, please.
Okay, thank you. So if I may, I didn't remember wrong. I said I think that you're asked how can we try to improve especially some very remote place cooperation or development in such a situation, right? Okay, so I think that maybe in my understanding, there are two things that we can address. The first one is that China is the only country I think in the world has made more than several hundred million people just living the definite poverty in the world. So it's a kind of a very important experiences we can try to also to copy to other countries. Well, China also very active in sharing with our experiences, like for the e-commerce. We're not only doing the e-commerce with our trade partners, but also for the villages. I can say that many remote places in China are enabled by the connection with the main market, not only to have better provisions or products and services, but also they can sell what they produce. And they can not only sell what they originally produce, they can update their produce by a better spices of the plants, by the cooperation with the technology and also the information of the markets on the demand. So that is much more possible for us to share with our friends in other countries. Well, the second is that I think that it is quite important for the government to try to consider about the domestic affairs more than the external affairs. Even in the United States, if we can look at the United States for each government, for each administration, maybe the first year of the president's business are mainly on the domestic issues. So we know that the domestic is a very important base for the countries, especially when those people are the poorest in the countries and they do not have the ability to try to be provided with better opportunities. So we can try to provide them with better support, like for the SME, small and medium-sized enterprises, and also by the cooperation with the global supply chain. Well, I said that after the beginning of last year, the RCEP has provided us with a rule-based system for the neighboring countries in this region to do business with each other. We are able to deal with disputes and also trying to make it better with some better efficiency of allocating the resources in the manufacturing, in the services, in the integration of the digital economies. So I mean that all these businesses are very helpful to reduce the impact of the globalization on the poorest part of the society, while that is also, are very good opportunities for Chinese companies to benefit by the cooperation. So it's what we call the win-win situation. We are not only giving some benefits to others, but we also gain the benefits by expanding the market and while still strengthen the abilities for those people who can be involved in the global value chain. I think that is definitely a very important thing because China and the Philippines, we are neighbors. We are far more connected with each other. So there are so many things that we can share with each other. And that is definitely what the government should pay attention to, trying to improve the welfare of the people. And actually, that is also the goal of us. We are trying to improve the welfare of all the people in China, not only part of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Very good points.
Good.
Hassan, I know you have something to say. Please let me first invite our Chinese speaker to raise questions. You may put your point into your answer to their questions. Although we are already on the time, so I would like to extend a little bit just to have one round of questions from the Chinese friends to Philippine friends. So for our Chinese friends, if you have questions, just speak out your minds.
Okay.
Can I
May
make
I
a question
start?
right now, Chan?
Okay.
Can I raise a question? I have a question already.
Yeah. You can raise question when you answer questions. Let me first invite the Chinese colleague to raise their question. Dr. Zhou, would you please, do you have a question?
Yes, I just heard that in the United Nations, there is a vote on the cease of the fire in the Palestine and Israel. So there are so many 15 countries, while 14 of them vote for yes, while the only country of United States, they vote against that. So, the reason is very, very ridiculous. They said that this act didn't have any rights to give to the Israel on its protection of its territory. So I don't think that it's a kind of, what you call the democracies and, to protect the people, because that's the weakest people in the world have much less opportunities to speak for themselves. So I don't think that I want to have your opinion on this situation, especially when we're trying to, to distinguish with the politics and the economy, with the people who can speak, who have the microphone, and those who have to suffer from the actions of the politicians. What's your point about that? Do you agree with the United States position on this issue?
Okay. Dr. Dai Fan, do you have a question? Maybe let me move to Mr. Wang.
Yeah, I'd like to ask my Philippine friends a question about what the situation of the Bangsamoro peace process. Thanks.
Good. Okay, let me first invite Jonathan to respond to either or both of those questions and also raise your questions. Thank you.
Okay, regarding U.S. and Israel, it's a really long and also complicated situation. It is akin to the fight of the Bangsamoro. It's actually the same. So for example, in our country, the Mindanao. So people are coming into Mindanao, which are not original from Mindanao, because that Mindanao is originally occupied by the Moros. And through the years, as this migration happened within the Philippines, going to Mindanao, but this is a special case because this is not a migration coming from people from other country going to the Philippines, unlike the Israelis, the Jews going to the Palestines, which is originally the Palestines. So my comment on that, any artificially formed nation has an impact in the future. So the nation, which is Israel, is artificially done in 1948 with the vote of the United Nations during that time, because they thought, to save the problem of Holocaust, they thought that these Jews should have their own country and to express their own self-determination in what? In the sacrifice of the Palestinians or the Arab people that already stayed there for a longer time as well. So with that formation of that nation, which is now Israel, back up with probably the U.S. and those in power during that time. Now we still have that kind of problem, because the moment these people exercise their determination and they occupy the space, they get more space in the long run during the wars. So this extended their domination, and they wanted, actually their condition is they cannot live with the Palestinians. So that's a really big problem. I hope I address the situation. So in our place, we are not also, in my own opinion, I'm not also into that. Is it okay, Dr. Zhu? Did I answer your question? Now I want to raise a question, because I haven't raised a question to my Chinese counterpart. Okay, how do you react that in every a certain time, the US will replace its president, the Philippines will replace its president, and all other countries, while in China, you have a longer administration that could develop an idea in a certain period of time, while these nations in transition always. That's why there are, in the time of Duterte, he's more open to China. In the time of Marcos, he's inviting the US. So in the next president, we will not know again. So if we fight for this, because we are in transition and we fight for something, then maybe we should embrace a higher ideas than being looped into the realities that we are in transition right now. Do you see my point? That's my question. How do you react? How do you find this? How he should forecast the future given this situation that is unpredictable, because we have elections and you don't have it.
Thank you.
Okay. May I try to address some of my personal opinions on your question?
Please.
Yeah, I think that you raised a question very interesting, because a lot of people may think the same way. Actually, I think that it's very natural for all the countries have its special systems. Maybe in Philippines and United States, you have your own ways. Actually, I remember several years ago, before the COVID, I went to visit the Stanford, and they have there is a very famous professor who are doing some research on the democracy and what is the best one. And he don't think that the United States is the best one, because they have a lot of things for the polarization. We can see that the society has been distorted by the polarization. And I have some friend from Australia. He complained it with me that the term of the administration is too short to make any meaningful decisions. So I think that is one of the characteristics of China. we can have 5-year plans, we can have even longer year plans, and all the things are done by the elections. We do not only have the election, but we have very strong elections to represent the different ways. So actually, I do believe that if we are looking at the result, it should be a result oriented. If this is not good, I think that people will not agree with that. So actually, especially in the past several decades, we can also observe a lot of achievements that can only be done with the continuous working in a certain directions. And also, it is very impossible in many countries that one administration can update itself, trying to reduce the bureaucratics, a lot of bad things. But China is trying to do that. If you are looking at these certain of the Belt and Road Forum, you can find that one of the main points is trying to make a cooperation based on fighting against the corruption. So actually, it is one of our priorities, and we are trying to make it better, to make it more stable. Well, I believe that we are still in the process. We didn't see that we will not change. So actually, a lot of experiments has been done in certain areas, like in the free trade zones in Shenzhen. They are trying to do more. And I would like to see that all the experiences we have achieved are based on the experiment, little by little, and gradually we can be better to fit not only for the peoples of China, but for the human communities, or what we call is the humanity destiny of the world. So that is some of my thought, not represent any government or official response. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Let me invite Ms. Lani maybe to give some response to questions raised by Mr. Wang.
Yes, with regard to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I think the US is in the wrong side of the history. Right from the start, they have tolerated the injustices, the oppressions towards the Palestinian people. The Israel government, for me, is similar to the ISIS. It's very similar to the ISIS, where you try to make a religion into a political ideology. There is nothing different from what the ISIS is doing in the Middle East when they try to impose creating an Islamic State, which is the Israel, the Zionist. Zionism is an ideology of creating a Jewish state. Even rabbis, my friends who are rabbis, Jewish people, religious people, do not agree with them. So I think China is siding in the right history to correct this injustice, and to provide a platform for the war crimes committed by Israel to be accountable. To the second question, the Bangsamoro peace process right now is still in the transition. There are many challenges. I think we could provide a separate webinar for that to give us specific details. But for me, I think despite these challenges of transition, building a new government, decommissioning, putting former rebels, combatants into active civilians, more than 40,000 armed MILF, Moro Islamic Liberation Front, members of the MILF, that needs concrete programs, that needs concrete economic and social and even psychological programs for them to develop. So I think that those are my quick answers to the two questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm going to close the discussion by give the floor to Mr. Dai to raise his questions if you have. Mr. Dai, do you have questions? If no, I think I'm going to close this discussion, a very successful, open, and transparent discussion, by thanking all our speakers to make yourself here on behalf of the host East-West Bridge and two organizers, GGI and the Al Kalam Institute. Thank you all. Thank you very much. And this is just the beginning. Let's look forward for future discussions. Thank you very much, and look forward to your article, Jonathan. Please send it to me.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Goodbye.
Bye.